Congratulations, you have found the Lambcast, the official podcast of the large association of movie blogs, also known as the Lamb. The Lamb is the largest collective of online movie blogs and podcasts with 2,000 members and counting. Every week on the Lambcast, various members of the Lamb community get together to talk about our favorite subject, movies. So bookmark the Lamb and follow us on social media. Be sure to join us each week to hear a lively discussion of films and movie-related talk from our members. Join the flock at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Lambcast. This is episode 769, and I'm your host, Richard Kirkham from Kirkham A Movie A Day. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has been going through a rough patch since the end of the Infinity War saga. The pandemic slowed momentum, and projects like The Eternals and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania nearly stopped it. And although Deadpool is now part of the MCU, it remains to be seen if a continuing storyline can be found to keep the train running. The Disney streaming shows have complicated matters since a lot of movie fans don't bother with the endless deviations and create no investment in new characters. The newest film in the universe tries to address these issues by creating a team of flawed heroes to take the place of the now defunct Avengers. Can the Thunderbolts succeed in restoring a string of connected characters to the series? This week we'll find out. Hopping aboard the train to ride at least to the next station are four lambs who will certainly have opinions. Matthew Simpson of Awesome Friday Podcast. You can't fly. I doubt you can even punch and shoot. So maybe you just bloviate.
Yeah, that's an accurate description, and I'm happy to be here to do that.
Jeffrey Lyles of Lyles Movie Files. Is there something wrong with you, or are you just bored?
A little bit of both.
Rachel Wagner from Rachel's Reviews. Are you one of the bad guys or one of the worst guys?
People looking at my Rotten Tomatoes score will probably put me in a bad guy for this movie.
And Todd Liebenow of the Forgotten Filmcast. Are you still a super soldier in your prime?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I'll just keep telling myself
Excellent.
that, yeah.
Well, this has the
I don't think I ever was a super soldier.
Well, this has the makings of a team that can raise to glory. We'll see if that actually happens. We're going to start with our general thoughts, and then we'll talk about a variety of other issues. Anything you guys can think of that you want to kick in, feel free to do so. Those of you listening, there'll be a spoiler warning when we get to the wall, and that'll be in a little while in the show. So let's get started. Your general thoughts. Rachel, I'm going to start with you because it sounds to me like you are going to be an outlier on this one.
Well, in truth, I actually had very mixed feelings about it, but in the world of Rotten Tomatoes, you have to pick a team, and I think that it is, I guess, admirable that they took a risk, but it just felt so unendingly bleak and depressing, and it's just not what I go to the MCU for. And I guess in a way, like, okay, you did something different, that's good, but I just didn't think they handled tone well, and I didn't feel attached to these characters by like only seeing their trauma. Like the thing with the Guardians movies, especially this last one, is that yes, it showed a lot of trauma, but it was always counterbalanced by the fun moments where we could become sort of attached to the characters in that way as well, and not just be like, boy, that was a depressing experience.
All right. Well, that's fair. I understand exactly what you're talking about. Nobody goes to the movies to be depressed. At least nobody that I know. Jeffrey, how did you feel about the Thunderbolts? Were you traumatized, or did you find it more inspiring?
Definitely didn't find it inspiring. I enjoyed it because I feel like the MCU's been this big weird roller coaster since Spider-Man No Way Home, and I was just kind of, I don't know, I had some different hopes for this, which of course were based on my experience and love of the comic book adaptation of the Thunderbolts. So I knew going in it wasn't going to be what I quote unquote wanted, but I thought they did a good job with these characters who I guess some fans of the MCU have been kicking and screaming, try not to care about. And I thought they did a good job of setting them up for what comes next.
Yeah, well, I do think it is a setup for what comes next. Obviously, if you stayed through for the longest post-credit sequence in the MCU history, you'll know that there's something coming immediately, and of course, they're trying to keep this story going. Although I'm not exactly sure a lawsuit sounds like it's a great way to create a dramatic story. Uh, Matthew, what did you think?
I really enjoyed this movie, and to me, this movie felt a lot like Marvel Phase 1 and 2 in that um, it's a little bit thin and it has a bit of a problem in the third act isn't the right way to put it, but like it's a little bit overlong, it's a little bit thinly plotted, but the characters are so much fun and so well performed and have such great chemistry together that like I'm willing to let it slide on most of that. And then at the end, it actually, has a point, which actually lands really well. And I really appreciate it for all of those things. This is my favorite Marvel movie in a while, and I don't even think that they have had as big of problems as most people would tell you.
So you're a lot more enthusiastic, it sounds, than anybody else so far. Let's see if Todd can match your enthusiasm or if he's going to fall on the other side of the critics scale.
Well, yeah, I'm pretty much where Matthew's at. I enjoyed this one quite a bit, and I agree with him. I think that the struggles that a lot of folks claim the MCU has had in recent years are a bit overblown. For the most part, I still enjoy all those movies and recognize that there are some problems here and there, but I still end up having satisfying experiences with them. Um, I thought this movie was a lot of fun. It reminded me in some ways of the first Guardians film. Uh, I I don't want to make that sound like I'm saying it's on the same level, because in my book, Guardians of the Galaxy is the best MCU film. But I think that this film does a great job of taking, I mean, saying B level characters might even be generous. They're C or D level characters, and building an interesting story around them, and making me care about them more. I mean, it's no spoiler that, I mean, the Chairs spoiled it a few weeks ago, that we know these characters are coming back in the next big thing coming a year from now. And I was kind of like, are these characters ones that we can hang this big event that's coming next year on? And by the end of this movie, I was like, yeah, I want to see what they have to do with that. I'm excited about that. As far as the depressing angle of things, I mean, yes, that is there, but I think that we have a great um I don't know if resolution is the right word, but a point where these characters kind of they come together and they are healing each other, shall we say, by the end of it. People have drawn comparisons to the end of Toy Story 3, and I was like, yeah, I could kind of see that. That's kind of a fun comparison. So yeah, for the most part, I had fun with this one.
Well, I'm going to chime in and also come down on a pretty positive side. I don't think this is the most solid of the MCU films, but it's probably the one that I've enjoyed the most in the last six or seven of these movies. Maybe the previous Guardians movie was a little bit more solid, but it really feels to me like they are still finding their footing with these characters, and they did a pretty good job explaining what their limitations are and what their needs are. And unfortunately, of course, a lot of it is reflected in their depressing circumstances. So that makes it a little bit tougher. But that's also part of the entertainment, because we're contrasting these people who are supposed to be, gifted, important, significant. They're role players in the world, but their lives are not exactly happy ones, and they're not exactly content with their circumstances. And the fact that they have been kind of forced together in what is essentially a murder plot is an
Mhm.
interesting counterpoint, and it's another one of those things that there's a lot of dark humor in this film, and I appreciated that. I didn't think that it was so dark that it damaged the film for my entertainment value, but I appreciated it. And all of the individual characters, we'll get to them in a few minutes, I think managed to hold up after a while. I do think it is going to be an interesting future, and I have to say I'm suddenly a lot more intrigued and interested in what happens in this other film that's coming out this summer than I was before. I didn't feel particularly invested in that other film, and now I think, okay, there's something that's going to go on here that's going to be a part of this, and I can see that there is value in trying to connect everything, although I don't know if they're stretching it too much. I'll know in, I guess, a couple months.
Yeah, I actually Fantastic Four is my the more anticipated one for me this year, and part of that is just because my limited comic background. I don't claim to be an expert in comics, but one comic I did have spent time with was Fantastic Four. One of the things I did with my son when he was very young, we read through the original run of Fantastic Four from the 60s together. It was kind of like our before bed activity. And so that movie being set in a what appears to be an alternate 1960s and drawing from the stuff from that run of the comics, I'm excited about. So
Well, I'm trying to remember. Jeffrey, you're a comics guy, right? You know all of these ins and outs, don't you?
Yes. Probably more than I need to, but yeah, absolutely.
So, do you think this is making sense the way they're going with this?
I think I'm trying to be mindful to not say anything that could be a spoiler. I think because they didn't start everything off with the Fantastic Four, who are basically the founding cornerstones of the Marvel Comics universe, and so many of the characters that we've come to know and love from, the MCU originated from the Fantastic Four.
yeah,
And to
yeah.
not
Black
have
Panther
them.
came from Fantastic
Black
Four.
Panther, the Inhumans, more or less love. I mean, I still, despite that TV show, Adam Warlock, there were a lot of characters. Kang showed up there, Rama Tut, Doctor Doom. So there's a lot that went into the Fantastic Four, and then to throw them in so late into, what are we like 27 films into it now?
30
That was
something,
the
I think.
best.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. So this is the best approach. Have them do their thing somewhere else with all their experiences that they can draw from. I have some thoughts about what's going to happen with this upcoming movie that I'm excited about. I was looking forward to it, and nothing's changed on that end, but I was like, okay, cool. Looking forward to it. It's almost time now. That other guy from the main hero from the other company. I'm looking forward to I guess this is what, 2 more months now. But yeah, so I think the approach that they took makes sense, and the approach they took with the other team from Marvel will make sense. And I guess that's the entire point of this multiverse saga, since they couldn't just act like, hey, they've been here all along, like they did with the Eternals, which I think is why some of the reasons people didn't like that movie, or at least the deep comic book fans like me.
Well, of course, we also had the problem that the studios were had different objectives when it all started, and they controlled different properties, and so it was hard to get that cross-pollination going. They managed to do it with the Spider-Man series, but we've had three shots at the Fantastic Four before this, and they have not been the most memorable of films. But I'll tell you what, the
But
the Thunderbolts,
we've had four if you count the
yeah,
Roger Corman.
which is hard to find.
You definitely have to count it
I
though.
think it's on YouTube now. There's yeah. I tend not to judge a lot of the comic book movies in the Marvel banner before Iron Man too harshly, because they were just kind of throwing everything against the wall. Oh, Blade will stick.
Yeah.
X-Men will work. Spider-Man will work. Well, let's try Electra. Let's try Daredevil and Ghost Rider. So I think Iron Man was the first one. It's like, here, this is how you do a Marvel combo character. Because I know people love the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, but I always felt they were flawed because Spider-Man talks. He's a chatterbox, motor mouth. He doesn't shut up. And he's like a ninja running around in those movies. And so I didn't dislike the Fantastic Four films as much as a lot of people. I did hate the way they portrayed Doctor Doom, which is why I'm a little bit worried about Doomsday, but that's way later. But I feel like those were fine. The most recent Fantastic Four was terrible because it's like, no, that's not the blueprint. You already got that. It was just, it felt like we're going to hold on to this so it can't go to Disney. And it felt like it. So yeah, I didn't judge the Tim Story films too harshly. And I feel like we're talking so much more about
I
Fantastic
mean,
Four because I'm
That's
excited
okay.
about that.
We're gonna get
Yeah.
back to it because hey, this film creates a connection. That's a reason that we're willing to engage in the discussion about it. So it's not a problem. But we do want to talk about the characters in this particular film, some of whom are very familiar, some of whom are probably less familiar to others. I think that Yelena and the Red Guardian will be very memorable from those people who watched, Black Widow. Um, and of course, uh, Bucky Barnes is not going to be somebody that people have forgotten. But there are other characters that were introduced in the story, become part of the team, so to speak, that were maybe villains in other shows or passing references toward the end of one series or another. And they get a lot more development here, with one major exception that we'll save for a spoiler in just a few minutes because. Not everybody who gets introduced as one of the Marvel characters survives to the end of the story. Um, and I think it also, there are a couple of characters that become part of this because of the streaming services. So that's a little bit of a complication too. If you haven't been following all of those things, you may be wondering, well, wait, who the hell is that? And why is this person dressed that way and doing these things? Uh, I've not kept up with everything. I managed to know one of those things, so I felt more secure in my acceptance of that character than I would have if I had not seen
I
one of the
would
streaming services
I would
or
argue
one
that
of the
this
streaming
film,
shows.
I mean, the character you're talking about is pretty much John Walker, right? And I would argue
Yeah.
that this film
Yeah,
gives you
yeah.
everything you need if you haven't seen Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah, he's not his whole core element
yeah,
is retained just fine for this film. I really enjoyed Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I really liked what they did with John. So I was curious to see how they're going to treat him in this. And I thought they did a nice job of bridging those two, where if you missed it, you were still able to keep up
yeah.
with
And then there's a
everything that
scene
was
at the
important
film
and
where someone
essential to
calls him
him.
Dime Store Captain America, and that's pretty much all you need to know anyway, right? And
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
That covers it.
Yeah, there's the one line about him murdering a
yeah,
person with his shield, and that's pretty much the only tie-in specific to Captain the Winter Soldier. I was glad that they did that though, because that was a very upsetting scene in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I was glad that
yeah,
they
and it also lends
at least
context to
mentioned it.
his later character, the character development that we learn about, which I think I'm getting ahead of us a little bit, but like, all I'm trying to say is that like the few, yeah,
Oh,
I
I don't
think I
think
yeah.
they
think you're
are.
right
So
where
like
they're
he
supposed to
gets some
be.
character development, and knowing
Yeah,
that
yeah.
about him makes sense. And like I say, like this film, even like I'm gonna jump to Ghost for a second, but like everything you know about Ava is also in this movie. Like it's great if you've seen the stuff they've appeared in before, but I don't think you need to. I think this film gives you the
Yeah.
Coles Notes version very efficiently. And they're pretty thin characters to begin with, but the performers are so fun that again, I didn't care, like it's their presence and in particular their interplay I thought was really fun. And Wyatt Russell's just really good at playing a big dumb meathead asshole. So it's like
I yeah, I agree. I I was not expecting to come out of this going, I think that Wyatt Russell might be one of my favorite performances in this film. I, I I loved that he made me care about this guy that is essentially a jerk, and maybe is still a jerk by the time that the film ends. But I just got so wrapped up in him, and it's great seeing
I mean,
him
they're
channel his
basically
father a
he's
bit,
really
so.
he's a clone, right? Like he's just a clone. Like I
Yeah,
don't know if you've seen
right.
Monarch, but like that is one person. Like it's yeah.
Well, how about some of the other characters? I mentioned Yelena and the Red Guardian. Let's face it, David Harbour is the comic relief, with occasionally John Walker thrown in. And I thought that he brought it and did a very good job on it, even though he sometimes is overplaying the character. The truth is he's kind of supposed to be overplaying it, and I found him to be quite entertaining. But also, there's that one section where he has the talk with Yelena, and it really did feel poignant and sincere. At one point, she says, "That was a really good speech." And I'm going,
Mhm.
"That was a pretty good speech." That was a pretty good moment for him, trying to be a human being who is essentially her father. Whether or not they are blood related, she sees him as her father. He sees her as his daughter, and they have a moment that I thought really reflected that. So I do think that they managed to give him some gravitas that he didn't have in the Black Widow film, but it worked much better here, and I appreciated that. By the way, I'm not exactly sure why Florence Pugh has decided to channel Tom Cruise in the stunt category,
I think that's awesome.
but I was that I was surprised at that. I thought, well, that must have been that had to be a double coming down, and apparently it wasn't.
No, she did the stunt, but yeah, no, going back to David Harbour, I love him in this film. I think I don't know, Richard. I got the sense as you were talking there that maybe some of your appreciation for the character comes from maybe the challenges that as a father you face, and trying to feel like you have you're doing your job right, and earning that place in the eyes of your kids. I kind of I don't know, I got that vibe a little bit watching this character and what he's dealing with, trying so hard to kind of be the driving force here, and maybe coming up as being a little bit ridiculous. I, I I know there's those moments as a father myself where it's like you do something that you think is important, is encouraging your kids and moving them in the right direction, and then you think about it, you go, "Boy, I must look ridiculous." Did that really come across the way I think it should have? Things like that. So I don't know, something of the father in me related to his challenges as a father figure in this. And David Harbour is great in the movie. I mean, I saw earlier this week that at the Avengers campus at Disneyland that they've added a Red Guardian character, walking around here for a limited time, meet and greet, photo ops, whatever. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if that ends up hanging on much longer than Disney intends, because I can just see people just wanting to have their moment with Red Guardian.
Yeah, he's definitely, I think, the best character of and he's pretty much all of the lighter moments. The comic relief is relegated to him. I mean, 98% of it's very, the rest are very
I mean, it's him, and then like
sad.
there's a lot of quippiness, but yeah, he gets all the big moments, and I think what makes it work, I think what we're all alluding to is that despite being over the top, and I can definitely see some people. I have one friend in particular who's going to think it's too much. I can tell you 100% right now. Um, but I think what makes it work is that it is just so sincere, right? Like he's big and over the top,
Yeah,
but
I
he just
agree with
wants to
that.
be useful, and he wants
His
to be present, and he wants to be seen, and it's such a sincere take that it's hard to not find it endearing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do
Hmm.
think he was the best character of the movie.
Well, I always enjoy a good dad joke, and I appreciate the fact that he's not telling dad jokes; he is the dad
But
joke.
that scene you mentioned before,
Yeah.
Richard, the one where they have their little heart to heart, and she confesses her feelings and he's like, I'm not good at this. Like that whole scene made me a little misty. And maybe I'm just a huge softie. Like to be fair, I am a huge softie. I clear all
Oh.
the time at movies. But that's
Yeah.
yeah, it scene was
Oh, I
great.
agree
Like
with you. I
very
thought it was really
again,
well done.
very sincere
It's so
and
excellent.
very
Yeah.
forward in what it's trying to do in a way that I feel like sometimes movies try to be like subversive is the wrong word, but like not straightforward on these kind of things. And sometimes I feel like when it's this kind of feeling, you just kind of need to go for it. And this film goes for it in a way that I found really satisfying.
So with that scene, I felt like Red Guardian is always trying to be on and amped up and super positive because he misses the glory days of being a respected, celebrated hero. And he's just trying to be positive. And I thought that was a rare moment for him where he was not being rah-rah cheerleader. Yes, this is awesome. But he saw where Yelena was and trying to meet her there while still being that cheerleader, just approaching from a different way. And I'm probably one of those who feels like he's a bit too much at times, but I do think that David Harbour gives it a really good performance. So even though at times I might be like, you tone him down a bit, I do feel like he makes the character far more tolerable than some of those other comic relief characters we see thrown into MCU projects, like Korg, who I just find annoying. But I think that
Aw.
he is he's like I can work past any annoyances I have with Red Guardian. It's like, that's just how Lexi is. Where there are others where I'm just like, please take them off the screen. So, and I really thought that was his best moment in the movie, though, because it was a nice father and daughter moment, and everything's going crazy around him. They still had this moment to do that, which I thought was really cool and well done.
One thing I wondered about watching this movie is I left thinking like who was their intended audience for this movie? Because I feel like, and I understand it's rated PG-13, but I feel like if I took a young person, I would be frustrated. Because I don't think that I mean I feel like this movie is skirting real close to that R rating.
I can see that. There are obviously references to some dark things that happened in the past for these characters,
Mhm.
and it's kind of disturbing. We have a new character, for instance, that we haven't talked about yet, and although it appears at first that he's kind of a charming goofball side character, he becomes something much more important in the story. And when we reflect back on what his past arc is, that's also pretty dark, and that actually becomes the main plot point in the last third of the film.
Definitely. I mean, I feel like he's sort of a, a B-rate vision, but not as charming or
I mean, if we're going to talk about
entertaining.
Sentry, Bob, uh, I think that Lewis Pullman actually might have the most impressive performance or performances in the film because he's effectively playing three different characters, each of which has a different vibe and a different body language and a different intent. And I found him very compelling at all times on screen. And uh, just the way in particular, the way he performs. I know it's not technically three separate characters, but the way he performs as Bob versus as Sentry, I found really, really interesting. And I can't wait to see what they do with that character in future films.
Guy's making
Yeah,
a career out of playing
I
characters
saw
named
an interview
Bob.
with him on online yesterday, and someone asked him that question, and you can definitely tell he's been asked that question about a bazillion times, and he's kind of over it. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
definitely it's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great performance, and it's a really interesting character. I mean, this is a case where my knowledge of the comics that inspired it are nothing. I mean, I know nothing of this character going in. After having seen it, I looked some stuff. I see perhaps Jeffrey can clarify a bit here, but my understanding is this is a character that was introduced within the last 2 decades. It's only about 20 years old, and was designed as a character that's like basically Marvel's Superman, but without the morals of Superman.
It's more so. And he was introduced when he was introduced. He was well, yeah, he was introduced in the late 90s, I think.
The 90s.
And the idea was that he had existed all along, but everyone's memory had been erased. And then it's not so much that he doesn't have the morals; it's that he has DID. Right? He has two separate and distinct personalities, one of which is good and one of which is bad, which we see in the film. Spoiler alert. Yeah, he is Marvel's Superman, except he's way more powerful than Superman. He's probably the most powerful comic book character. I don't know, Jeffrey, if you agree with that, but he once tried to kill himself by flying into the sun and survived, and can survive total molecular deconstruction. So, yeah.
He's in that realm of characters where they make them too powerful and then they don't know what to do with them, so they have other characters come up and then introduce, and then they kill him. And it's like, oh wow, this guy's even more powerful. So I like that original take on him where no one remembered Sentry, and then it was like, well, let's tear him down and make him a little bit darker, which is just, it felt like became the norm for how comic writers would tell stories with characters. And I really like that original take, like, hey, Stan Lee had this character he created. And it was like a hoax, but it was a really fun story. And he had all these connections to characters like the Hulk, Reed Richards, and Tony Stark from back in the day. It's really fun. And I think they did a great MCU translation for the character. And I thought they did a good job with him based off of how Sentry started, how they kind of tweaked his origin story in a way that made sense for MCU audiences who might not have ever read anything about the Sentry.
I think it's interesting that they came up with this character the same summer that we're getting the Superman movie.
Well, I'm sure it's not purposeful at all. That's
similar.
I'm sure it's a total coincidence.
Just like that coincidence of the two attacks on the White House, or the two volcano movies,
two asteroid movies,
asteroid
the Summer of Columbus films.
That's right. There's always some coincidence that relates to industrial espionage, I'm sure.
Well, see, the problem is there's so many like, oh, this character can fly, he's got super strength. They're all Superman. So it's how is this character different from Superman? Oh, he's an alien. How's this character different from Superman? Oh, he uses magic too. And oh, he uses lightning to channel his power. So it's like every character with a lot of super strength and invulnerability and maybe some laser projection, that's Superman. So yeah, it's like they're all 2 degrees of Superman. So, and because DC Warner Brothers is always trying to figure out how to crack the Superman movie formula, it's like, oh look, here's a new Superman movie. I mean, they could have done this 5 years ago. Hey, here's Henry Cavill's Superman. No coincidence. So there's just the way they're set up now. Like Adam Warlock, he's basically a Superman clone too. So there's so many, and the best ones are the ones where it's like, oh yeah, I guess I could see how that's Superman. Sindri, I think, is just way too powered up, and based on some things that they could do, I'll save it for spoiler, but he's not as invulnerable and as powerful as Superman as they make him out to be.
I do think that the way they've introduced him, and y'all were talking about it a little bit earlier, but in terms of the way they introduce him to the MCU makes sense, and it continues along tradition at this point, I think is an appropriate word, of the Marvel Studios looking at the comic books and saying, what are the best parts of this character? And then distilling those into a character for the films. Like what are the best parts, and what are the parts that work for what we want to do? And then making that version, a new version of the character from those pieces. And I think that they've done a really great job with that, with Bob here.
All right. Well, I think we'll probably be coming back to this character at some point in the future. Such things have been promised to us in the past, and they have yet to come to fruition. But I imagine that this one probably will be one that is part of their plan. I'm sure of it because they've got a plan. And although I don't follow all of those things as closely, I know things are coming that involve these characters again. So we'll look forward to that. There were two other characters that I had brief reminders of from other films and maybe the streaming shows that were kind of important, Valentina and Mel. And Valentina, I I have such a brief memory of Julie Louise-Dreyfus in what was it, the end of Black Widow? I,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
that's about it. Is her character present in some other storylines that
She's
I'm not
in
aware
the
of?
Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and recruiting John Walker, among
Yeah.
other things. And
Mhm.
I think that's it.
Yeah, I did watch that. I have no memory of it. That's my fault. Old guys just forget stuff.
It might even be in the post credits where if you weren't like, hey, a TV show's gonna have post credits too.
I think
Or
she's
maybe
in
it's the last
She's
time we see John Walker.
yeah, she's in the
she's in
post credits
Wakanda
of Wakanda
Forever as
Forever, right?
well.
But she's like,
Yeah.
oh,
No,
right,
no,
right, right,
earlier
right,
on,
right, right.
because not Coulson.
Other white
Gosh, what
CIA
was his
guy.
name? Jeez. Why am I drawing like Martin
Oh
Martin
yeah, yeah.
Freeman's Martin,
Yeah.
yeah, his character. Everett Ross, there we go. I had to go through the comic book character Rolodex. Uh she's his ex-wife. And so there's a whole scene with him getting information from her and she's setting him up. And yeah, so she's very prominent in that one in terms of her Coulson role
I
for
mean,
this
she's
phase of
basically
the
like
Marvel Cinematic
Dark Side
Universe.
Nick Fury, and I'm fine with like amoral Nick Fury. It's
Yeah,
fun.
no. And like Matt said earlier, I had enough of what was being introduced here for me to understand what was going on in the premise. That all made sense. I just know that there was probably some other stuff that I was maybe missing out on a little bit because I didn't have as much backstory, but I didn't need it to understand what was going on here. Maybe just a little bit more of the character and the machinations that happen. Both at the beginning of the film and at the end, uh, which we should probably talk about now. So, and it involves discussing the plot of the film. So, I think I'm going to drop our spoiler wall here and tell anybody who's listening who hasn't seen the film and is concerned about something being revealed that we haven't already revealed that might affect your enjoyment of the movie. Come back and listen to the rest of the show after you've seen the movie. But at this point, we're going to go full spoiler territory here, and including discussing the plot line. And that's where I wanted to ask you, did you feel like this was, I know we've already talked about it being kind of a dark theme that's going on here. This is all about loneliness and depression and despair as being driving factors in these heroes' lives. And it's hard to call them heroes because they are really anti-heroes for the most part, but they act in heroic ways in many sections of the film. Although, like I said, Yelena, we're ultimately, I think, supposed to identify with her and see her as being heroic, and probably she sees herself doing the things that are right. But she murders wantonly in that opening scene, and I'm just going, "Wow, that's pretty.
Mhm.
That's pretty grim."
Yeah.
Except the guinea pig. She
Yes.
saved
Honestly,
the
the
guinea
most
pig. So.
important person in that building is the guinea pig. So it's like how you can't kill a
Yeah.
dog and be a good person. No, it's like
The, the guinea pig will be a major player in Avengers Doomsday.
Yeah, it's going to turn
That's
out to be an alien creature that can do
honestly, if
fantastic
that guinea
things.
pig shows up and it's like her pet at in like the opening scene of Doomsday, like that would be my favorite thing. I think about it. You know,
Well, aside from the guinea pig, how did you guys feel about the way the story developed and was told? Did it feel like it was moving? Somebody said earlier that they thought it was a little sluggish. Maybe that maybe that was a dream I had.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I mean,
Rachel.
I can see that.
I thought the film was pretty
I mean,
brief. It was only 2 hours and a couple of minutes, and that to me felt like a relief compared to some of the films that I've seen from the MCU.
yeah. I mean, it moves. It is kind of two different stories almost in that, the first one is very much the characters all brought together to try and eliminate each other, and then you realizing that and trying to escape. We don't really get the ultimate, threat, until the second half, or maybe even the last third of the film. But I was fine with it. I mean, I liked all the stuff with them in that, I don't know, what do we call it, that warehouse on top of a mountain trying to kill each other. That was fun stuff and gave us plenty of chance to develop these characters. I think for the folks that don't know these characters from having watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier or whatever, don't have the deep knowledge of it, those scenes are going to pay off pretty well, because that's what
I'll just jump in here and say that, like, I think the plot is really good. I think that the pacing is really good. I think it's one of the first films in this franchise in a while where I haven't thought that there was like some stuff that could be cut. Like, I thought it was really well structured and paced. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it is basically a mashup of Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers. Like, pretty overtly too. Like, oh, in the beginning they're all opposed, and then they have to form a team because of an outside force, and then they have to work together to save the day at the end. That is Guardians of the Galaxy. And then they have to, save New York City from a surprise invasion of New York City by an all-powerful godlike being. That is the Avengers. I'm sorry. Yeah, like literally in the same building. It's
But both of those films have way more like lighter scenes where we get to know the characters.
At all, just to be clear.
And even the music in Guardians it helps lighten things up. And it's just, I don't know, it's not what I go to a summer blockbuster for, to be like existential dread.
I totally get it. I'm not debating the tone. And I totally get why you've come away with it the way you have, to be perfectly clear. I'm just saying that, like, the basic plot points are a remix of two of their most popular things.
Yeah. I'd agree with that.
Well, and I mean, if we want to talk about the depressing aspects, I would say, what ends up happening in, the final act, where you have, Sentry there, or more accurately, the Void now, attacking New York. I mean, what happens to the people is terrifying. I mean, he just raises his hands and they turn into a shadow on the ground, which, conjures up images of, Hiroshima and stuff like that. And you don't know what's happened to them. I mean, we're in spoiler territory now. So the scene where Alexei saves the little girl and then little girl gets shadowed away, I was just like, oh my gosh, that
felt pretty dark. And when we discover what's going on, and there's a reason that it's dark, because that's where they all end up, in their own little dark void, suffering for eternity, apparently.
But see, at that point,
what
we
did
don't
that
even
little
know.
girl suffer from?
Yeah, we don't know what it means. Yeah, it's for all we know, she's dust. But
I mean, there's
that was shocking. Definitely,
whatever the little girl's going through can't be good.
The little girl.
There's a scene later where Bob says that, like, he's in one of the OK rooms where he's constantly reliving his father abusing him and his mother, and that's one of the better rooms. Like, Jesus,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to go way earlier, like to that initial fight scene where we lose a character, and it's like so obvious which one we lose, because we never see that character in any promotion, any pictures. It's like, what happened to the most powerful member of this team based off of what we saw? I mean, it took 2 Black Widows to take down Taskmaster for the entire Black Widow film. Now all of a sudden, one gunshot to the one place that has the most armor takes her out.
Yeah.
And I understood it's because Taskmaster is too powerful. And if you got Taskmaster, what do you need a bogus Captain America, a third or second tier Black Widow for? Because she's got all of it. And she's got Hawkeye too. but I feel like there could have been a better way to write her out than just, oh, here's the
Counterpoint,
one weak spot in her
They
armor.
could have just
Well,
not
and you know
used
where
her
part of
as
that
well.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that
Exactly.
was sort of because I know a lot of people were really annoyed by the way that character was translated in the Black Widow movie from the comics?
Yeah.
And just like,
I
let's
mean, I
just
think
get rid of
that's
this character. We screwed it up.
yeah.
Well, here's part of the part of the problem, okay, with this is that since Avengers Age of Ultron, people have been saying, who's going to die? Somebody's got to die. People are clamoring for somebody to die in these movies, and I'm just like, no. I mean, it can happen. It needs to happen organically and stuff, but you don't just need to have a box to check every time that some character's got to die. And I feel like part of this is that people say, oh well, you can't have them all survive, we got to kill somebody,
right?
So,
It doesn't automatically make stakes just because somebody died.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and especially when it's a dumb way. And you said Age of Ultron, but they killed Coulson off in the first Avengers. So, but
true, but I don't think they were clamoring for that. I mean, when it was Age of Ultron, everybody was saying one of these main Avengers has to die, and of course they got around it by killing Quicksilver. You know,
that was dumb because he was
that was dumb.
Ridiculous character. He sees them coming. He sees Ultron barreling down with his blasters. Oh, I'll sit and watch and hold this girl when he could have just ran off with his super speed.
Yeah, well, I mean, even Coulson, we still got him back for. I mean, because they changed the the timeline, so we still got Captain Marvel and. Yeah, I don't think that makes stakes, especially with somebody we don't care about. Like, just having more carnage.
The funny thing is that so I
do that for me.
Like I'd avoided as much as possible, but I had a pretty strong understanding that Elena was going to be basically the protagonist of this film. And spoiler alert, she is. And so my wife and I watched Black Widow the night before we went to watch this movie. And coming out of that movie and going into this one where Taskmaster dies immediately, I was like, well, that sucks. Like, I would like to know what happened to Taskmaster in the because that movie takes place before Infinity War. And this one this one is 8 years later? 9 years later? And there's a decade of stuff that could have happened. And it would have been interesting to get to know that. So I just wish they hadn't done it at all. I wish that and I get that they're trying to make stakes, and I think it does automatically give some amount of stakes. But when everyone's like she just dies, and everyone's like, "Oh, that sucks," and even Elena, who Taskmaster leaves with Elena at the end of Black Widow, right? They should be friends or at least know each other. But and I guess it goes to how disconnected and lonely Elena is, but it's still, the whole thing just kind of rubs me the wrong way. I think it's one of the few things in the film that's really mishandled.
Yeah, it's one of the major ones for me, just because I felt like if you're gonna kill a character off, and I'm not opposed to it, but I think it needs to mean more. Where it's like, oh man, they couldn't have done this if this character hadn't held the door for everybody else, or just something, as opposed to, oh, in a fight. And we never have Ghost have that moment of, oh man, I really feel bad because I shot someone. I mean, there's a brief conversation. Oh, you knew her? Yeah, I knew her. And she's dirt. We all have it coming. So
yeah.
And I wanted more. I mean, because I feel like Ghost really gets shortchanged in the character development. She's like the main one on that front, where everyone else has their whole thing. I don't even remember if we saw what Ghost was reliving through her worst moment. And I felt like maybe that could have been something they could have used as driving Ghost through the rest of the movie, outside of, hey, they've managed to get a little sound device and she stopped. But yeah.
I still felt like I got more out of that character this time around, though, than I did in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
One of the things that made the Avengers, I think, so effective as a group is that they all had really differing character arcs that they were going through. Like the arc of Thor versus the arc of Tony versus the arc of Steve were all really different, and they were all coming to different conclusions about the way the world worked. And so that made it compelling when you saw them in the different films.
Yes.
And it really feels like all of this group are going through the same arc.
I think it's similar to Guardians in that way, right? Not exactly, but it is the story of a bunch of losers coming together to make each other better. So I'm sort of okay with that. I just wish that some of them were a little more broadly drawn.
But even the Guardians, you had
Yeah.
like Nebula going through a certain thing, and you had Rocket going through a certain, like, they were, I think, different and unique enough, and they all each kind of provided a different degree of humor.
Just
Like one
just to
was more
play
sarcastic,
just
one
to
was
play
more,
devil's advocate for a
you know,
second, I don't disagree with what you're
Literal.
saying here. Again, I feel like I'm saying this to you a lot for some reason, but what I will say is that what we're talking about right now, also like those characters have had three films to develop each, like because the first film is really just Star-Lord and Gamora,
yeah,
right? Like
that's
everyone
fair.
else is pretty thinly drawn. And then the second and third films we get into more
Yeah.
details of the rest of them. Like Nebula doesn't get really fleshed out until the second one. And Rocket is the protagonist of the third one, right? So, um, yeah,
All right, Matthew. So I'm going to play Angel's Advocate for you now. But these characters have had more time than we had with the Guardians with their first film. We had John Walker was in
yeah,
a
you're
TV
not
show.
wrong.
What, 6 episodes? We've seen Lena in a movie and in Hawkeye. And I feel like there was something else. So she's been around. Ghost was in a movie for whatever that means for her character development. Same deal with Alexi. He was in a movie. So it's not like we're getting them cold. And I feel like The Guardians, the film that you mentioned, because it's great. I thought like, you got so much of those characters from that first film where these wacko weirdos are coming together as a family. Where I feel like by the end of this, it's they're a team and they're stepping up because nobody else is. And I feel like with the Guardians, it was like, oh man, what wacky fun adventures are they gonna go into next? Whereas with these guys, it's yeah, well, nobody else is here, so I
Yeah,
guess we're
I
stuck
mean
with these
they're
guys.
losers at the end
And
too,
I don't
right?
know.
Yeah, you feel like
but that
everyone, you
Yeah,
feel like everyone's on a suicide watch at the end of this movie. I mean,
right.
it's pretty bleak, and where like Guardians was so entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
It was so, even down to the music,
Mm-hmm.
was, you wanted to go home and download the soundtrack because it
Right,
was
right, right.
so entertaining. And I don't know, it's just like, don't doesn't Marvel have a kind of a, aren't people going into their films
I mean,
expecting to be entertained?
I was gonna say I
I
was
think that's
entertained by
Red
this
Yeah.
movie
Guardian of
though,
this movie.
so
well,
yeah, I get what
Yeah,
you're
it
saying
was
though.
him.
Like,
yeah.
I really love how much conversation
What
we're having about this movie, just for the record,
what you
because
were
I feel like these differing takes are good.
Yeah. I mean,
It's fun.
I did walk out with mixed feelings. There were things that I liked about it, and that, I mean, I thought it was a well-made movie. I thought the performances were all good, and I appreciated some of those, especially that last act in the
In
in
the
the
being John
this
Malkovich world,
the void
the void,
or
yeah, the
White
void.
Room.
or the Eternal
yeah.
Sunshine memories, whichever way
But
you want to go with it.
yeah, yeah. I left thinking like that was a swing. They did try
I also
something
like.
really
I also
different.
would say that like
Mm-hmm.
I'm very
You know,
glad that the stakes for this movie weren't the end of the world. Like this, I mean, they weren't. I
could have
mean,
Did we,
been.
did we
we
have
had
a
a character
character that was
attacking the
creating the end of the
city.
world though?
He seemed to be stopping at the
Yeah, I
edge
mean,
of the East
attacking
River.
the city, but like the.
You know,
But I feel
who
like one
needs
of the things that has
Manhattan?
sort of brought down
Yeah.
Marvel a little bit is that most of the films, especially post Endgame, have been trying to like recreate this like world-ending stakes. And the emotional stakes of this movie are more like, how do we deal with our trauma? Like, how do we get through it? How do we like heal ourselves? It's a lot smaller, it's a lot more contained. And I very much appreciate that because again, it feels a lot more like phase one and phase two, where we're sort of
Yeah.
learning about characters and they are going through their stuff, not just being like, well, I'm here now and I have to save the world, which
Kind
Well,
of
I
like
think the
Iron Man 2.
multiverse has really hurt those end of the world stakes. It's
Oh,
because
absolutely.
it's impossible to really feel it because it's like, well, you can just,
Anybody
it's,
can
We're
come
going to
back
slip
anytime.
over to
Yeah,
another
All
you
characters
universe.
know,
from
Yeah.
another world.
Right. Yeah.
whoopsie, we can just go back and another variant or another, like, so I think it's really hard to create those end of the world stakes
yeah.
in a
Mhm.
world where you have multiverse.
But I
Yeah.
mean, that's the way it is in the comics too. So you
Yeah.
know,
Well, you know, it's
Yeah.
funny because Marvel did not really do that as heavy as DC, where DC had all these different Superman, Wonder Woman's Batman, and it was more of a
That's
recent
true.
thing where they started exploring a multiverse, which I was like, oh, come on, that's DC's thing. Which is really why it's so ironic that Marvel got to the multiverse on the big screen where people are going to think DC copied it, but it was really much more of a DC thing where they celebrate until it was like, it's confusing for people. And this is before the internet and Wikipedia. But, they were just so like, oh man, this is too overwhelming for our readers. And now it's like Marvel found a way to make it work. But I would argue they definitely didn't for this arc for the movies. And when I mentioned earlier about how I really wish they had done what they did in the comic book. This is the only time they were going to have this opportunity, which was perfectly laid out for them. In the comic books, the Thunderbolts start off as Baron Zemo and a bunch of other villains pretending to be heroes because the Avengers aren't here anymore. Same thing, the same setup we've got going on in the
Oh.
MCU at this point. And so they're masquerading. They've got all these cool identities, Atlas, Citizen V, Meteorite, Techno, and everybody's loving them. And at the end of the issue, Baron Zemo is like, we've got him. We fooled him. Now we're going to, and it's like, this is so awesome because this would work perfect. We've already got a Baron Zemo who's worked to manipulate things behind the scenes. He hates the Avengers for what they've done. This would be his next step. And he was one of the few villains who managed to survive. And that was kind of the thing that I was trying to brainstorm. Like, they've killed off so many good villains. They don't even have enough members to make an anti-group of heroes like the Thunderbolts.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
in the comic
When
book,
was the comic? When was this comics?
this was also in the 90s. And but the
Oh,
interesting thing
90s.
is some of the members of the team that were villains who were fighting the Avengers actually like being heroes. And they're like, well, Baron Zemo, we don't want to go along with your plan. We actually want to stay
Oh,
heroes. And I think
so
that
it'd
was
be
an
like
opportunity for them to do that. And it's just
suicide.
like,
It'd be like
I
Suicide
mean,
Squad.
basically,
Suicide Squad. Yeah.
No, better than Suicide Squad because it was like the Suicide Squad was just like this mix of heroes and villains being manipulated by Amanda Waller to do something. But this is where, these villains had tragic backstories in a lot of cases. They didn't see any other way out. And it was like, wow, through this plastic surgery to change my face and changing up my powers, people respect me. I'm not being bullied and I don't have to bully people back. And it feels good helping others. Whereas Suicide Squad is I've got this bomb planted in my head and she's going to blow it up if I don't do what she says. And so that was kind of fun with it. And I thought this was really the only opportunity for them to do it. And so to go, let's do our version of the Suicide Squad. It's like, eh. And we've got there Amanda Waller with Valentina manipulating everything and still coming out squeaky clean by the end of it. And it's just like, eh.
Yeah,
I
it's
like the
true. Like,
movie. Yeah.
who could you have? You'd have like, I mean, what?
Vulture, Baron Zemo, I thought. Let's see who else. Because it was like, all right, what's the
Because you're not gonna
Spider-Man
have
character they can kill?
Loki.
You can't use Loki. No, I mean, they could have used Yelena, John Walker's characters that Baron Zemo's convinced this is the way to do it. Like maybe Baron Zemo works with Valentina. And then they could introduce a few other shady characters. They've got Shocker, they didn't kill off from the Spider-Man films. Um, Maybe an Ultron that they've whipped up, and Ultron's identity is a secret that only Baron Zemo knows about. There were enough characters they could have done something with, but it just felt like, oh man,
Mm.
this is a great opportunity to do this because there's literally no Avengers, and then we got Captain America. Oh man, these Thunderbolts are actually villains. I've got to rally my own team of Avengers to stop them. And, then wait.
Well, I mean, maybe we're moving into the ultimate spoiler here, but I mean, it sounds
Okay.
like they're kind of doing a little bit of that. I mean, one of you said earlier about kind of the idea here of, well, we're stuck with these guys type of a thing. And I loved how the movie embraced that, how, we've got this stuff over the end credits, that's kind of like, all these media clippings of kind of like, who are these
The
folks,
Avengers.
and yeah, I mean, we haven't given away that ultimate spoiler yet, but you know, I thought it was, it was fun the way that the movie kind of reflects what I think is probably the reaction of some audience members, where they're like, this ain't Iron Man and Thor and stuff. These guys, who the heck are these guys? They're the new Earth's greatest heroes. No, not my Avengers.
I agree with Jeffrey. Actually, I think
Yeah.
that first incarnation of the Thunderbolts was the best and most fun. I also that they're basically doing the Dark Reign, Dark Avengers, Norman Osborn version of Thunderbolts as Dark Avengers. is kind of like exactly what I
Yeah,
expected for
exactly.
where we're
Yes,
at in the
exactly.
MCU today. Like so I'm sort of
Hmm.
two minds about it. Like I appreciate they've done a good job, I think, of adapting that version of it to the MCU. But yeah, the version where like
Hmm.
they're all actually just
Yeah.
villains in disguise, um, is very fun. And I do actually kind of maybe we'll get another season of What If and we'll get that story because that would be great.
Yeah, because I think some of it just stems from me loathing the idea of the multiverse because I feel like outside of No Way Home and the fun they did with Deadpool and Wolverine and some of what they did with Multiverse of Madness, they haven't done much. They haven't done nearly enough with the concept to make it so like, oh wow, this has been such a great idea. I really feel
Yeah.
like they had so much more fertile ground in keeping things from the end of the world spectacles that you just had Thanos. Let's bring it down a notch. I think if they had just done like, hey, the Skrulls are actually posing as people, let's take them down. That could have been at least half of this phase. And then the Thunderbolts, they're all faking. So maybe they lead off with the Thunderbolts, right away instead of doing a whack
Well,
team
we're
with the
only
Eternals.
36 films
And
in.
then
Maybe, in the next 36 films, we'll get some of those,
I mean,
things that you're
I
talking about.
wonder I wonder how much of
Yeah.
yeah.
this was hampered by the loss of their multiversal villain and or just the refusal to recast that character. Like I I wonder like obviously that
Yeah, I
guy got
wondered about
fired
that
and
too.
rightly so. And I feel like there was a perfect opportunity for them to pivot to someone like what is his name? The guy who played the villain in Guardians 3, Chukwudi Iwuji, and just be like, oh yeah, he was a variant of Kang.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just be like, oh, the High Evolutionary was a
High
variant of Kang all
Evolutionary.
along, and then just have him be Kang. Uh, could have made things a lot easier for them. And I know that Kang is like an interesting but difficult character because how do you be scared by a guy who gets beaten in every film? But at the same time, like a team up of a lot of Chukwudi Woodies would have been a great thing to have for them to have to fight in one of the Avengers films. So
Once
Yeah.
again, the MCU could
I
use
think
all of
King.
us in their writers' room.
obviously, yeah.
Yeah, we're available. Marvel.
All right,
Call
well,
us.
I think.
let's kind of wrap up
Go
this
ahead.
part of the discussion and see if there's anything else that we need to talk about the this particular film, as opposed to speculating too much about the what ifs and could have beens. Uh, because we do have some other things to do today, and I do see the horizon down the
I
road here a
I
little
have
bit.
two quick things I
So
would like to talk about,
go
or
ahead.
which are kind of the same thing, actually. And they are that I appreciate that for the first time in a while, when there's action happening on screen, the camera is pulled back and held steady and doesn't cut very often. So you can actually watch what's happening when our, you know, expert hand-to-hand combatants are doing expert hand-to-hand combat. Um,
And I would say some of the fight
oh yeah,
scenes in
like
this
that
are some
early
of the
one in
best
the
fight scenes we've
warehouse where
had in
they're
the
like the
MCU.
knife is being
Yeah.
thrown back and forth between them. Excellent. All the fights are excellently
Right.
choreographed.
Yeah.
And like,
That
And
was
the fight
good.
and
Yeah.
the
I mean,
first fight with
even
Sentry there in
Florence,
the penthouse,
yeah,
great. Fantastic.
Yeah,
even
the
like
cinematographer was very good.
Elena like going through that hallway shot from above in the dark, and it's clearly not Florence Pugh. Um, is is great. The shadow play.
I
I mean, it's
love
the
the
same
shadows too
cinematographer
because it
as the
was
Green
nice
Knight, for those
foreshadowing.
of you who appreciate pretty things on screen. Um, but I just want to say that like it's been ever since
Yeah.
Winter Soldier, and like I don't want to open a can of worms here, but I don't think the Russos are very good action directors, and the MCU has had a real problem since then of shaky cameras, shot too close, cutting too frequently, and this is the first film in a while where I've been like, I really love that I can see what's happening,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to highlight that. And
Yeah, I think it's the
yeah,
best
yeah,
action
Shang-Chi
since
is one of
probably
the exceptions
Shang-Chi.
to that what I'm talking about. And then
Yeah,
the other.
yeah, yeah. Uh, we can't leave this episode without
Oh
saying
yeah,
it's the best use
yeah.
of an asterisk
The other
in
small
a
piece I wanted to talk about too is that just that
in a
most Marvel movies since about the Avengers, a film that I love, just to be clear, have looked like when they've gone through color grading that the black point was set at dry concrete, and this is the first film in a while where that has not felt true. So I also appreciate that a lot. So just to get
Yeah.
some technical stuff out of the way.
I'd agree with that.
Well, anything else that somebody wants
Yep.
to cover before we close up this part of the discussion? The only other thing that I was thinking of is I'm still not sure why Bucky Barnes becomes a congressman.
I'll say that.
Yeah.
Why not?
I know I've
Why
been rambling a
not?
lot, so sorry for dominating a little bit. But I do find it very interesting that Bucky Barnes has gone from being one of the least interesting characters in the Marvel Universe to one of the most interesting and integral characters of the Marvel Universe. Like, it's a real testament to long form storytelling, but like, I found most of his appearances between Winter Soldier and then Falcon and the Winter Soldier to be pretty boring. But now he's super interesting and dynamic, and I'm really glad Sebastian Stan is still around.
Yeah. This is the best use of the character. Yeah.
Well, it's because he was always the motivational tool for Cap. That was the focus,
Yeah,
not his
that's
own real like arc or story. And so now
Mhm.
he's been able to kind of be his own character and not just a
yeah. And I do
motivational
hope
tool
because
for Cap.
we did get a glimpse of him running for Congress in Brave New World a couple months ago. So I'm glad he is now in Congress, and I do hope we get more of that story. Like, why is he in Congress? I hope we get more of it at some point through a flashback or something.
I also loved the nods to
Yeah.
T2 with his motorcycle sequence.
Yeah, that was fun.
Well, folks, thank you very much for your points of view on this particular film. It looks like it's going to do pretty well. I don't know that it's going to recover all of the glamour that they had earlier in the series, but I think they're going to be very satisfied with the outcomes with this particular film, and we'll see how it all ties into the future. We're going to take a quick break here to hear from a fellow Lamb Podcasting Network show, and then we'll be back for our exit question of the week.
You are about to witness history in the making.
Hi there, this is Todd from Forgotten Films, and if you spend all your time watching new releases, then you need to broaden your movie horizons. And a great way to do that is by joining me for the Forgotten Filmcast. We don't talk about the new releases, we don't even talk about the classics. We talk about the movies that time forgot. On each episode, I'm joined by another film blogger to discuss a film that may or may not be worth rediscovering. So look for the Forgotten Filmcast on iTunes, Podomatic, and wherever you find great podcasts.
Well, as you can see, we've been talking all over the place about the MCU, projecting to what might be happening in the future, looking back at what they've done in the past, looking at comic books and how they've been translated, characters have been changed, added, a whole variety of things that have gone on. So, stimulating this conversation one more time with a question that relates to the MCU as a whole. Our exit question this week is about our favorite characters from the whole, well, basically the Infinity War saga. I'm going to include everything from Iron Man to Endgame here. I'd like people to share with us their favorite hero and your favorite villain and a little bit about why you care for each of them. So, Rachel, we're going to start with you. Do you have a hero in that whole sequence of films that you can lay your fingers on and say, this is my favorite, and I'm going to keep him all to myself or her all to myself?
Well, I really do love our main group, but I think if I was going to pick somebody that maybe dig a little bit deeper, I think Nebula is one of my favorites. Her arc over the course of the different movies and her wrestling with her feelings about her sister and her, and Thanos and everything, and you really got to see a transformation and a really great, I think, performance from Karen Gillan in that character. So I think she's definitely up there for me. And then my favorite villain, I do have to go with Loki. I just love Tom Hiddleston's performance and so entertaining. And so, yeah, that's what I go with.
I think those are good combinations. Loki, of course, continues to be entertaining for people. I know that they've done a second season. I don't know, is that series coming back again? I haven't seen the second season, so I don't really know
Same.
where they went.
It ends pretty
Okay,
definitively.
fair enough. Todd, how about you?
Yeah.
Well, when it comes to the villains, I mean, I think Loki is kind of the go-to answer for sure. But since it's already been said, I'll actually say I kind of love Ultron. I love that James Spader is playing this this evil robot. I think that's just kind of fun. And just the nature of, he can reproduce himself over and over again, and there's millions of him all around. I thought that was a fun concept. But when it comes to the heroes, I think I got to go with Rocket. I just love the concept that we have a gun crazy space raccoon. I think that's just so wonderful, especially when I think about how things started, and Iron Man, very much kind of being this film, existing in the real world. And, it makes me think back to like how Richard Donner approached Superman and things like that. But then, just a few films later, we've got, like I say, space raccoons and giant trees that walk around and things like that. So, but yeah, I've always loved Rocket, so I'll go with that.
Yes, the trash panda is great.
Yes.
Jeffrey, you got a hero and a villain that you can share with us?
Yes. Typically it would be Cap, but I'm gonna go with Black Panther because when they teased in Age of Ultron, Wakanda, I was like, oh man, are we really gonna get Black Panther? And one of my favorite cartoon slash TV shows is Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. And I felt like they did Black Panther so well. And when they announced that Chadwick Boseman was going to be playing the character, I was really excited because I'd seen, enough of his work. And I was like, this is the best casting possible. And his whole arc, watching that play out and in his solo movie and in Civil War, I thought, he immediately was established as a great player. And the only thing, of course, I'm not going to see him play that role anymore, but it was just so cool watching that character and everything he represented. And just it was really fun. And my villain, just because he hasn't been mentioned yet, is Thanos, because I just love a villain who's not sitting around, well, back in the day I got bullied and now when it was like he was just evil. I'm gonna wipe out half the population because y'all are too much. And it's like great. And I'll never forget watching Infinity War that first time in theater, dropping to a full hush where you could hear the mice running around on the floor. Everyone was just like, did that really just happen? And you can't get a villain like that too often where it shuts an entire movie theater up. And they're like, no, wait, the bad guy's not supposed to end. The movie's not supposed to end with the bad guy smiling, looking at his hayfield. So that was awesome. And seeing Thanos come back again, you should have gone for that. Just fun. And I like a bad guy who's just a bad guy.
What theater are you
Yeah.
going to where the mice are scurrying around the floor? Because
Yeah,
I don't want to go
think of
there.
that too.
Don't eat the
I'll tell you,
popcorn.
I went to a few theaters in downtown Los Angeles over the years that were maybe a little shady, and I felt like I'm gonna put my feet up on the seat in front of me. It's
Yeah,
incredibly rude, but there's a
right.
reason for doing so.
It's nothing like seeing the lights on the
Oh,
floor vanish for a second. It's like, wait, oh, that's why.
Oh,
Not
So
boy.
good,
whatever.
not good.
Yeah.
Well, my hero is probably the most conventional of everybody's. It's Captain America. I'm a nostalgia freak. I think that era of the World War II heroes is really effectively presented by Joe Johnson in that first Captain America, the first Avenger film, and I just like the whole premise that it's the thing that enhanced him was his you know, good qualities to begin with. And I think we do get a little bit of a tie-in with that here with Sentry because in essence they've done the same kind of thing, but they've got somebody who's a lot more flawed than Cap was, and we're getting the result of that in this storyline. So I think that he kind of sets up the precedent for everything, and I like that. And of course, Chris Evans did a fantastic job in all those films, portraying the character and making him relevant. My favorite villain is, it's Dime Store Captain America's dad, Ego,
Oh,
from
yeah.
the
Hmm.
because let's face it, you've got Kurt Russell here as the villain, and it's Kurt Russell. That was enough for me. I appreciated him. I like the fact that we get a turn. The whole idea is that he is the father of Star-Lord, and that would have been. one of those things where, oh, great, we get this resolution, we're going to get a reconciliation, they're going to be together, and it's the exact opposite of this. This was not a good thing that was happening. We discovered that he has basically modeled himself after David Hasselhoff, and I just thought that that was hysterical. And Kurt Russell just looks great in the film. So, that's kind of why I go there. I All the villains that you guys have mentioned, by the way, have been fantastic. I love James Spader's vocal performance in Ultron. I think that that's terrific. And the Thanos character is obviously the ultimate villain of that whole series, and Loki is the most fun. But like I said, for personal reasons, I'm just going to go with ego. And speaking of ego, let's
Well,
give everybody a chance to inflate their
Did
egos.
Matthew
well,
Matthew did Matthew get to go?
Oh, Matthew, did I say?
I
You know
didn't.
what? Here's what happened. I created a grid to do this. Matthew joined the show yesterday,
Oh.
like last night.
Yeah.
So
I,
it's my
look,
bad. Sorry about that,
I
Matthew.
don't.
Tell me what you got.
That's okay. I feel like I've talked a lot this week, so it's fine. As my introduction would indicate. Um, but I'll keep it short. My favorite hero is Captain America, and I say that as a Canadian because I have always liked the idea of sort of pure superhero, the inspiring person, the person we can all aspire to be, the person who always does the right thing for the right reasons. And also like, I'm a real big fan of the 40s aesthetic. So there's that too. And Chris Evans is great. So a lot of the same reasons as Richard. And my favorite villain is Killmonger, who I think is probably the best performed villain in the whole franchise by Michael B. Jordan. In probably the best film in the franchise, even if it isn't necessarily my favorite because the Avengers exists in Black Panther. Um, but almost entirely also because he does the wrong thing for the right reasons. And I think that that was a really interesting moment for the MCU. One thing it was a moment that really changed things for the MCU in terms of like villain
Mm.
motivations. And introducing like not that the films before Black Panther didn't have commentary, but this was one of the first ones that had some pretty overt commentary. Um, and I really appreciated for that. I really love when these movies have a point that lands, and Black Panther was one of the first big ones to really land. And it was almost entirely because of Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger. So he's by far my favorite villain.
All right, now we're going to get a chance to inflate our egos. Sorry about that. So before we go, I'd like everybody to share what it is that they have that they would like other people to be aware of. So here's your chance to promote something that you think people should turn their eyes and ears to. And Matthew, since I almost dumped you at the end of this last thing, I'm going to let you go first.
Well, I'll go as quick as I can. I write freelance, so you can find me in lots of different places, including acclaim.ca and thatshelf.com and 4beal.com and a number. And like the easiest way to find all of my writing and podcasting is to go to my portfolio page, which is stretched.ca. And if you want to read a bunch of other really great commentary on film and television, I'm also a co-founder of the Cascadia Film and Television Critics Association, along with actually fellow Lamb member Thomas Stoneham Judge. We are a critics group in the Pacific Northwest. We're up over 20 members now, and you can find all of our members' writing and such at cascadiacritics.com.
Thank you. Thank you. Jeffrey, what have you got to promote that people should be looking at or listening to or
Thank
reading?
you. So you can always read my daily writings over at Lyles Movie Files, where I talk about movies, TV shows. Looking forward to writing my recap of The Last of Us after this season has just blown my mind. Um, Andor season finale. I don't really love this three block episode format because it keeps me up. But I'm looking forward to those. And every Wednesday I do a podcast on YouTube, Lyle's Movie Files, talking about movies, TV shows. And every Thursday I do one where I'm talking about action figures, and a lot of which relies on stuff like Marvel, DC, Star Wars, etc. So May the 4th celebrations continue, and hopefully everyone who's celebrating is having a great one. And that's it for me. Thanks.
Well, may the fourth be with Lyle's Movie Files for sure. Rachel, busy girl, what do you
Yes.
got?
Yeah, you can find me, Rachel's Reviews, all over the place for both film and theater. reviews. I cover both. And I'm also a co-host of the Onstage Blog Theater podcast. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on theater, you can check that out. Also, Hallmarkies podcast. If you're getting tired of Marvel, go check out some rom-coms. And we talk about all that over there at Hallmarkies. So have a lot of fun.
Lots of stuff. And then Todd, I know that you're very active in the forgotten film world. So what do you want people to remember?
Yeah, of course. My podcast, we're releasing episodes every week. It's the Forgotten Filmcast. I recorded 2 episodes yesterday. This is my 3rd podcast recording of the weekend. So I've got this week's episode hitting in a couple of days. I'm joined by Tony Cogan. We're talking about a British family film from the early 70s called The Amazing Mr. Blunden, which looks like a ghost story, but turns out to be a time travel story. Kind of interesting. And then next week's episode, kind of give a preview. I'll be joined by Movie Rob. We're looking at a World War II thriller from the early 60s with James Garner called 36 Hours. So be sure to check out those episodes. And of course, I will say, you can follow me on X, where my handle, I did it first. Okay. You watch Thunderbolts, you'll see they do Avengers with a Z. I did it first because that's Forgotten Films with a Z is where you find me on X. So great minds think alike there.
I thought of that, by the way, when I saw this movie, and it came into my head immediately. I said, Todd, are you going to be suing for copyright infringement?
Me and Sam Wilson, I guess. Yeah.
And on my site, Kirkham a Movie a Day, I'm still covering movies that I see in theaters. If I see it in a theater, I'm going to be writing about it at least to some degree. I just got back from the Turner Classic Movie Film Festival. It took in a dozen or so movies in the time that I was there. So I've got a different entry for each day, and come and see all the stuff that you missed out on, those of you who weren't able to join us in Hollywood last week, because there was a lot of cool stuff. I'll always be praising the work, especially of Craig Barron and Ben Burt, 2 special effects experts who do the best presentations at TCM every year. And this year they did Colossus the Forbin Project, which was a lot of fun. So I got a little bit of a commentary on that, and there's a little stinger video to go along with it. So those of you who come, be prepared to take 30 seconds to watch some of the video clips too. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining me this week. It's been exciting. I had a full show. I didn't get anybody who wanted to talk about Captain America: Brave New World back in February. I literally, almost skipped that show. I'm not even sure we did anything on it. It was like nobody was signing up for it. This one, it grew and it grew and it grew, and I'm so glad that you were all able to join us this week. We can do this. No one here is a hero, but we're all lambs. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Lambcast. If you have an idea for a show or would like to join us on the Lambcast, contact us at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Find us on Facebook, just search for Lambcast, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Lambcast. And you can find us on YouTube as well. The Lamb site can be found at largeassmovieblogs.com. We'd also love it if you would leave a review on iTunes.
Ha 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 ha